Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today's guest is Dr. Eddy Agbo, and he's founder and CEO over at FII Biotechnologies. Eddy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Adam. Glad being here.
All right. So excited for this interview. For everybody that's been listening and following this series for a while, this is part of our FII Institute coverage series where I recently went out to the FII Miami event, and I'll tell you, I was blown away. There was just so many amazing individuals I met that I said, hey, I got to start doing some interviews. I got to cover this story. Eddy, now correct me if I'm wrong. You were at the Miami one, right? Because I've been covering a couple of stories now. So you were at the Miami one, right?
Yes, I was at the Miami event, yes.
Now, was this your first time attending, or have you been to other FII events or get-togethers before?
Well, I been invited kind of regularly to the FII event, but this was my first one attending. It kind of just worked out fine, then scheduling this time around. So, Adam, I was blown away.
What surprised you about it? Because I have a lot of opinions of this one too, but I know it won't be my last one attending. What surprised you, or what was interesting?
So what surprised me most about it was kind of just the peep into the future that this gathering is about. It essentially sets the pace for the future world economy, the future world politics, the future world, technology and innovation. And then the second aspect is really bringing in people who are at the frontiers of that, who are making that future happen now. That was exciting.
Yeah, I got that impression too, whether it was the programming, whether it was the level of individuals. Obviously, the president was there, and many big CEOs that we all know their names, like Elon Musk. There was a lot of interesting people there. But then also,
Right.
I noticed a lot of decision makers. Some conferences you go to, it's no offense to another conference, but you may see upper management, some other C-suite, but to see all the CEOs out there, I was like, wow, this is interesting, right?
Absolutely. This is really, as I said, where the future is set out, and those who would make it happen also really present to discuss how that would happen. Yeah, it's exciting.
Now, I do want to maybe switch topics briefly here, and I want to talk more about what you're doing over at FII Biotechnology. So I understand you've spent, some of your work developing a urine malaria test, which is really a groundbreaking diagnostic tool. What inspired you to focus in this area, and can you tell us a little bit more?
Yes. So, Adam, I grew up in a small village in southeastern Nigeria called Mbu, MBU. And as a kid, you saw your mates die from a particular disease that was on everybody's mind, malaria. I survived, obviously, but many years after I saw that many things were still the same. For example, if someone had a fever when I was growing up, the local doctor was just a patent medicine vendor who had really no training in pharmacy, just some months or a year of training on how to dispense medications. That was a village doctor at the time. And many years after that, decades later, in many villages in Nigeria and other parts of Africa, things still remain essentially the same. So I kind of decided to begin to look at this. Malaria, for example, was overly complex in diagnosing and managing. So my key idea was, how can we diagnose malaria like a pregnancy test? That's simple. You don't need blood. Anyone can do it anywhere, anytime. That was the impetus.
And so where did this journey of developing this, where did this take you? Tell me a little bit more about the story and where you're at today.
Yes. So where it took me was, as I said, this experience as a kid stayed, usually a lot of traumatic things stay with you as a kid, even into adulthood. So my training, education, not necessarily perfectly planned, but it kind of led me in direction of global health and getting the appropriate training and experience and work ethic to be able to address big problems. And I kind of see myself as almost cut out for beginning to really look at big problems and how to address them within the context of not just the science, but the strategy, the storytelling, and thinking about it as a systemic issue rather than just a disease intervention issue. For example, when you think of malaria diagnostics, it would be very misleading to think of that, let's say, our tool the urine malaria test, thinking about that just as a diagnostic tool alone that should work everywhere. There are other systems issues, healthcare systems issues that have to be factored in to make it a successful tool for intervention. And those are the things that I learned over time, which being brought to bear as we deploy this tool across Africa and the rest of the world.
Wow. Speaking of global healthcare and really your focus on this overall, what are some of the barriers you see to innovation in global health, and maybe what are some ideas on how they can be overcome?
Yeah. So one of the key things I really see in global health is it's supply driven, what I consider a supply driven type of intervention rather than need driven. And that need driven model, I believe, would require that folks in the global south, where we're still dealing with major global health issues, need to be better represented in the product design decisions, what interventions are needed. And then we also need to begin to encourage in-continent type of capacity building, not just on the surface of it, but really developing long-term strategies to help incentivize local R&D that will start to take these issues up from ground up rather than from top down. So one thing that could even happen, why don't we have a global health innovation pact, for example, where multiple countries could share IP, R&D experience, R&D capacity, full procurement for various tools. Right now, with the changes with the U.S. government focus in global health, countries now have to begin to address how to deal with their own needs. Many countries in Africa relied entirely on global donors for their malaria intervention activities, for their HIV intervention activities. These are huge issues in many parts of emerging markets, especially Africa and some other places. So such an innovation pact could be very helpful in driving progress along these lines and then pulling resources together.
Eddy, what are your next steps? I'm just curious. So obviously you have your work and what you're doing in malaria. What are your next steps? Like what kind of other projects or just things are you working on in general? What are your next steps?
Interesting. So as we drive the deployment of this, because we really want to transform the way malaria is tested and treated globally. We want to see a situation where people at home, anyone at home can test for malaria. And this is kind of driving our vision as a company toward point of need, not necessarily point of care, but point of need intervention. We want to see that not just in diagnostics, but we want to see that also in provision of care. So we are thinking of adopting new technologies toward care. For example, AI-powered augmented reality-enabled type of virtual hospital system for primary care services. We're already conceptualizing that. We are driving further non-blood testing as a tool because, blood testing introduces a level of complexity in terms of home use. But we are champions of kind of enabling the patient to take charge of their health on their own. Home-based diagnostics. Those are kind of our areas of focus now. And then co-creating ecosystems where innovations can be born and hailed and owned locally by folks and peers within the regions where these are mostly practiced. So rather than exporting solutions, we want to build out those solutions from ground up locally. That's really
I love it.
Those are the levers we are trying to push right now.
I love it. Big dreams and big work, Eddy. I'm glad I met you. This has really been a lot of fun having you on the show today. If somebody's listening or watching this, and if they want to follow up or they want to learn more about your work and continue to follow your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
For sure. Please reach out to us. We are FIODOBio.com. I'll spell that out. FYODORBIO.com. FIODOBio.com. You just email us at FIODO@FIODOBio.com.
Wonderful. And for everybody listening, just so you know, I'll definitely put the links to the website in the show notes so that you can just click on it and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Eddy, thanks again for coming on the show.
Adam, thank you so very much for having me. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your audience very much as well.